Hi, everybody. My name's Marianne Lampatang. I'm the General Manager of Stone and Chalk, and we're delighted today to partner with the Spark Festival to bring you a session with three of our fabulous founders. So for those of you who don't know Stone and Chalk, we've been involved with the Spark Festival since the beginning of time. I think it was around 2015, and our CEO was actually one of the founding members of the Spark Festival. So today we're going to talk about how we can use technology to own our finances, particularly in the pandemic age. And we've got three awesome founders here, and I'll introduce all of them, and they'll tell us a little bit about themselves and what they're doing, and then we'll have some rapid fire questions about what's happening at the moment, and then we'll throw to the floor. So if you've got any particular questions, you don't have to wait till the end. You can just put them in the Q&A section down the bottom. Okay, so we've got Pascal Hellimoro from Super Rewards. We've got Tarek Ayub from I keep forgetting to call you the right name, Tarek, from Before Pay, formerly known as Check. And we've got Paul Feeney from My Plan. So I might start with you, Pascal. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, about Super Rewards, and what gave you the idea to create Super Rewards.
Yeah, thanks, Marianne. I'm delighted to be here today. So Super Rewards is an online shopping platform where you earn cash from Australia's leading retailers into your existing super fund. So to be clear, we are not a super fund. We help you get free money from Australia's leading retailers into your super fund. So think of us like a power charger for your super. Now, the idea for Super Rewards came about as a result of the work I do with the Australian Gender Equality Council, which is a not-for-profit dedicated to assessing and influencing the state of gender equality in Australia. And it was really with my work with the council that I came to fully understand and unpack the key drivers of the super gap, but also I saw firsthand how things weren't changing. Government moves very slowly, corporates move very slowly, and yet, on the other hand, we have 1 in 6 women in Australia retire into poverty currently. So this really prompted a huge realization for me in that women are stuck in their current roles. So then the question became, well, how do we leverage what women have? And they have caring responsibilities, and they also have purchasing power, where women make 80% of household spending decisions. So how do we bring those two things together to create an income stream, effectively, into superannuation?
Fantastic. And you launched probably about a year ago now, Pascal, is that right?
That's exactly where 1 year ago.
Yes. So congratulations on your 1-year anniversary. Now, when you launched a year ago, things were a little bit different to where they are right now. So maybe you can explain the journey, what you set out to achieve like a year ago, and how that journey's evolved in the last 12 months with the pandemic.
Yes, so things very different a year ago. A year ago, I was not sitting in my daughter's bedroom to work, but, c'est la vie, and we do what we do, right? So the impact of the pandemic has been fascinating, actually. So we work with the super fund. So we are available to consumers to sign up, and everybody should sign up and start using Super Rewards today. But we're also working with the super funds, right? Because it's for the super funds, Super Rewards helps their members be engaged with their super. It helps them earn super. It helps keep their super insurances in place, and so on. So we're doing a lot of work with the super funds. Now, in terms of a pandemic and its impact on us as a business, well, it turns out there's never been a better time to be an online shopping platform, because as a nation, we've all learned how to shop online. So that's been really beneficial. From a partnership perspective, working with the super funds did become really challenging because, like everyone else, all projects and innovation were kind of de-scoped for a good 3 or 4 months there. And then the conversations on Super Rewards and the funds using Super Rewards have now come back on the table. So it really slowed business growth. And I feel it's only now in October that we're having the same sorts of conversations that we were back in March. But looking at the silver lining, I think if there is one key thing that the pandemic has done, and I know we're going to cover it later, it's that all of a sudden the word superannuation is on the everyday person's lips. which, I thought was never going to happen in my lifetime. But because of the early super access legislation, which we'll cover in more detail, the superannuation has become part of the national daily conversation. So there is a far more heightened awareness around it. And because we have seen so many billions of dollars taken out of the superannuation system, the funds are now actively and quickly looking for a solution to help their members rebuild their super. And guess what? Super Awards is just that.
Absolutely. And on the topic of superannuation funds, the latest statistics actually show that $34 billion has been withdrawn in the last couple of months, which exceeds the target of the Treasury, which was around $27 billion. And now that they've actually extended the time till the end of the year, they're forecasting $43 billion. It's a lot of money. So, Pascal, before we pass on to Tarek, if people haven't withdrawn their super yet, or they're contemplating, what would you say to them before they think of doing it? And for those who have already withdrawn their super, what other little things that they can do to top up?
Yes, sure. So I would say that drawing or accessing your super is the act of last resort. If you're able to get a short-term loan from friends or family, or get into a repayment schedule with whichever provider you need to talk to, that would be fantastic. But understand that not everyone is in a position or able to do that. I would strongly advocate trying everything else but touching your super, because your super is your retirement. People, I think, struggle to achieve a sufficient retirement goal as it is, let alone without a global pandemic impacting that scenario. So if, you can get a side hustle, find extra work online. Obviously the online delivery system needs a lot more workers now. So I would say it really is an act of last resort. But if you do need to touch it, and I'm very cognizant there are some pretty dire circumstances for a lot of people out there, then the key thing is to try and just start rebuilding it as soon as you can. Now, adding to your super doesn't need to be something where you go without something else. And I want to make that really clear. So with Super Awards, for example, as a means of topping up or rebuilding your super, you have to shop for groceries. You have to shop for pet food. You have to buy, things on eBay, or maybe a new pair of shoes for the children or something. All these little things that you do and have to do on a daily basis can add or earn you super as you do so. But there are other things you can do in terms of rebuilding your super, and they might be looking at spousal, splitting if your spouse works and contributes to super, and it might also just starting a roundup program. So with the spend that you are undertaking, let's say you spend $9.50 on a juice or a lunch or something, by sending the extra 50 cents to your super, then adding to your super becomes something you do every day automatically without really thinking about it. So they're just a few tips to help you start to rebuild your super.
Awesome. Thanks, Pascal. Now, Tarek, tell us a little bit more about Before Pay and what gave you the idea to create it.
Yeah, sure. So previously, I was a management consultant. I worked in financial services, and I always had this idea of the way credit is being distributed to individuals is kind of a little bit broken out there. I always thought that there are way better ways to do so, more customer-centric ways to do it, just like Afterpay are doing it. For example, they're disrupting credit cards. The penetration rates on credit cards has been at an all-time low, historical all-time low. That's basically what we're doing. We, at Before Pay, we provide working people with the ability to access a portion of their wages on demand, instead of waiting for their paycheck to come in a month later or so. So if you've got like a shortfall in your spend, or an unexpected bill, or just shopping really that you can't shop with Afterpay or Zip or anything, you could just use Before Pay to gain access to that money. Um, what we found is there's been a high take up rate in the post COVID period, especially as people either lost their jobs in the COVID period and then they're coming back onto the workforce. So they need a little bit additional funding there just for the moment being, which is great. We're happy to help. So we
Okay. Sorry, keep going.
no.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how does it actually work? So just say I want to get some cash a little bit earlier than my payday, and I've already earned it. What are the
Right.
practicalities of accessing that money?
Yeah, great question. So it's really our system is really simple. You just download the app, look for Before Pay on the App Store, and you log in through your bank. We connect directly and sync directly with your bank account. We then detect your pay cycle. All you got to do is provide us with a form of ID, basically, so we could meet our regulatory requirements of KYC, and then you just get to cash out instantly. We can deposit the money in people's accounts within 10 seconds. So end to end, from downloading the app to getting cash into your account, it could take 5 minutes.
Wow. And then you automatically take that money out when they get paid.
It's up to them. So we offer flexible 4-week installment plans. It's up to them to do it either on their next payday or whenever they like. But we just offer the flexibility to individuals. We don't charge them any fees for that. We only charge a one-time transaction fee of 5% on anything that anybody takes. So we don't charge late fees or dishonor fees or anything like that.
Yeah.
Nice and simple.
Excellent. Yeah. And what has the feedback been from your customers, particularly in this period, to access that money relatively quickly and have a way to pay it back in a safe way?
Yes, absolutely. So we've had tremendous feedback, to be honest, Marianne. We've grown exponentially in this period. We've got about 30,000 users that use us right now.
Wow.
It's growing really, really fast. We are on the top 10 or top 5 in the App Store constantly. And our feedback is, I think it's sitting at around 4.8 stars on the App Stores. And if you read some of the feedback, it's great. For some people, we've helped them out a lot. Put food on their table, for example, or pay a bill or get a tire. Because their car shut down on them, but at the same time, you've got other people who we did help, but marginally. So they went shopping, for example, with the money, and they loved the ability to have that additional cash, and most of all, they loved the ability to budget for it. Because with Before Pay, you're able to budget far easier. We provide you with the budgeting tools within the app as well. We predict your upcoming bills, so you're always aware of what's coming out. We also send you alerts if we predict that you may be at risk of dishonoring from another payment, not from us, just from your bank or any other payment like that. So we provide people with enough tools to keep them financially stable, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll come back to you a little bit later about some of the tips that you can give to the viewers as well. Now, moving on to Paul. Now, Paul used to be a private banker and a financial advisor before he created his own startup. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about why you decided to do that.
Yeah, so we started Map My Plan quite a few years ago. I think people are getting more and more aware that access to personal financial advice is getting tougher for a lot of people in this market. It's expensive, and we all saw the Royal Commission and what happened there. But fundamentally, when people want to get their finances in order, all of us have just one question that we really want answered, and that is, what do I do next? What do I do today, tomorrow, next week, or next year to improve my finances so I can live the dreams and aspirations or the things that I want to do with my family? So what Map My Plan does is we're a self-directed platform, entirely client-led, no advisors tapping away behind the scenes, where they can build a personal financial plan without needing to engage an advisor. And we answer that simple question of, what do I do next? The only questions we ask of individuals is about your current situation. What do you earn? What do you spend? What do you own? What do you owe? And then what are you saving for? So short-term goals. And then what would you like your retirement to look like? The algorithm just then tells you what to do next. Once you complete that task, it tells you what the next one is. So it's really empowering the 8 million households out of 10 million households in this country that don't get financial advice, enabling them to build a personal plan which puts all the things we've spoken about today in the broader context of their financial life. So they can see how the great things at Super Rewards and the great thing at Before Pay will help people achieve things, but then give them the whole context and where it fits into everything along that sort of line. So that's basically what we do. And we work with employers to help them improve the financial well-being of their staff, some very large corporations, and then working with financial services firms who can use our platform so they can give more advice to more of their clients. And at the moment, on mapmyplan.com.au, it's basically free during COVID for this year, so anyone can go along and have a play.
Excellent. And Paul, you've managed your startup for a couple of years now compared to Tarek and Pascal. So you've had what I call a normal period of operation as opposed to just 12 months of abnormal activity. What are the changes that you've seen more recently with your customers, whether institutional customers? And I saw a couple of nods there when Pascal was saying it's just getting harder to get people to approve things, but you've got institutional customers that obviously have gone through a cycle and then they're a little bit slow to respond, but they have the power to actually reach out to all their employees or their members and offer that service to their members in this time where they need it the most. Has your journey been with those particular customers?
Yeah, so we took the decision last year to scrap everything and rebuild it all of 2019, which worked out to be a great decision. And we really started commercialising it a lot more. And so now, amongst about 8 different employers, we got exposure to 60,000 staff. And during COVID, the big response from the clients the employers that were working with us was really to give us even more support. So to do some webinars and really talk through and engage with their staff in a greater, I suppose, in a more hands-on manner, which allowed them to think about their well-being. And now that we're talking to more and more organisations, during probably the middle of the year, it was quite hard to get the attention of a lot of firms, but now we don't need to educate any management about the value of the financial well-being of their staff. It's a given that it's an important thing. It's now, where does it sit on the level of things that they need to do? So the conversations we have now are never, oh, no, I don't see the point of that. It's, yes, let's do that, not right now. We'll come back to me next number of months when we've got the headspace to be able to do it. But so we're getting a lot more traction, a lot more interest from individual firms as well, which is great.
Yeah, excellent. And you published a report which is called Financial Stress in a Pandemic. For anyone who hasn't actually seen this report, it's on Paul's website, mapmyplan.com.au. You can download for free. And I would encourage everyone to download it and read it. It's a very interesting, if not frightening, report. And what I wanted to do now is talk about some of the research that you found as part of interviewing, I think it was just under 1,000 people at the time around May, June. And the research that came out, and put it to both Tarek, Pascal, as well as Paul, to provide some commentary on what small things that people can do to alleviate the stress. So one of the stats is that 46% of households have $5,000 or less in savings. Now, if you think of the average household spend between $3.6 thousand and $9,000 at the moment a month, you don't need to be a maths genius to know that there's a big black hole out there. And Pascal, probably no surprise to know that women are less likely to have emergency funds than men. What are some of the tips that you can give people? I'll just throw it to everybody to help close that gap or to help make it smaller.
Yeah, I'll start off very quickly. The stats are really interesting because the average household can cover 3.5 weeks of their monthly expenses. And the benchmark is to try and get to at least 3 months. Yeah. What we also find, though, and it's not in the report, but in the stats of our users, is that around about half the people who've got ongoing credit card debt actually have enough cash to pay their credit card off, but they don't, because they want that security blanket of having the cash, even though it's costing them 20%. So one simple tip is get rid of that really expensive debt. It's eating away. It is the most wealth destructive thing you can have. And the stuff that Tarek's doing with his business is going to help people not have to go out and get that expensive debt, which is fantastic. But that's probably the one, and that was the biggest concern, even greater than the concern of losing my job in May this year, was not having enough cash to make ends meet. But I'll throw open to the others.
Yeah. And there's another piece of information that came through is that, and I think that's quite obvious, is that it's hit the younger workforce and women more than the older workforce and men generally. And that 76% of those aged between 16 to 24 are much more worried about their finances. And that's quite understandable because a lot of them lost their jobs, casual jobs, and they just don't know. They haven't had, I guess, as much life experience as older people to know what's going to happen next. Any thoughts on what people at that age can do, apart from staying home and living with their parents for a really long time?
Well, a lot of our users are actually about 55% of our users are actually in that bracket of 18 to 26 years old. So we've got a lot of millennials that are with us. What we find from our data set is that the more and more individuals are actually leaving full-time work and going into casual work. So there's a lot of casual work out there, basically. But what we also find is from our particular customer base that more and more people, less and less people are actually reliant on credit cards. So we've about 3% of our population value credit cards and have them, whilst the others don't. About 60% of our user base use Afterpay and Buy Now Pay Laters instead of taking out a credit card, which is great. Seeing the stat that Paul has pulled together, that's going to help in the next generation. Although not just now, it's going to help in the next generation. I guess what we could do really, what people could do really is number one, make sure you take maybe 1 day. Let's just get a little bit tactical. When you go to create a budget, for example, you literally don't even know where to start. And then you start getting very overwhelmed as an individual and you just drop off, right? And I think that's one of the main issues where Paul's system can actually help that. And before pay, we've got budgeting tools as well that automatically create budgets for people just based on their historical spending patterns. But I do definitely think that there's a psychological factor into creating a budget. You do need to set up a day or something, or a few hours or something of your Saturday, for example, just to really sit down and actually have a think about how you want to budget going forward. I think that first step will really give you a broader indication of your situation. And once you understand the situation, that baseline will help you strategize and create different ways and levers that you could increase your savings or decrease your costs per week or just tactical things like that. And before you know it, you've got $1,000 in savings and then $2,000 and so forth, right? So I think just start from step one from a tactical point of view. Don't get overwhelmed, and use tools like Paul's tool and Before Pay to help you budget if you need to.
Excellent. Thanks, Tarek. Another one, which is probably for another generation, but nearly half of the respondents, 48%, are now worried that they won't be able to retire when they want to, and that's Generation X, so 40-year-olds plus. Any tips for them, Pascal? Oh, and Paul?
Paul, that's you.
Tips for the 40-year-olds. I mean, at this point, it's always important to save for your super and save for your retirement, right? But now more so than ever. So any quick win or any slow win, in fact, in examining your household budget to really help work out how much extra you can tip into your super is is a great thing in my book. So I know, for example, that during COVID, the worst part of COVID, I know a lot of women, myself included, who, to follow up from Tarek's advice, sat down, looked at the household budget and treated it like a business, right? So I think we all need to remember that we are humans, we're creatures of habit, and we're inherently lazy. So we do things a certain way, and we don't revisit that way very often. So I use that opportunity, as did a number of women I know, to sit down and say, well, what if I shopped from retailer A on Super Awards, of course, versus retailer B? You know, they have, of course, it's cheaper items. So if I can save $100 on my weekly grocery shop or my weekly, household expenditure, then great. So I use that opportunity. I also use the opportunity to go back and renegotiate, my phone bill and my life insurance. I'm sure Paul must be so happy to hear me say this, and all those other big picture items, because those savings that you make now, if you can redirect the funds into your superannuation, then saving $300 a year or $500 a year on your life insurance, for example, is going to make a really, really big difference when it comes to retirement.
Absolutely. And Paul, you wanted to say something too?
Yeah, I think in our lives, they're pretty complicated. We've got a jigsaw puzzle of financial products or subscriptions and all that sort of stuff that we use. It's revisit those, because as an existing client, you never get the best deal. Just give them a call. Set aside that day during the week and call up these people and say, well, give me a better deal, otherwise you'll leave. And they will give you a better deal. And you'll be amazed, all of a sudden you've got that couple of $1,000s that Tarek was mentioning before. And like you said, you decrease insurance you don't need in your super, and all of a sudden your super grows a bit faster. But it's a lot of the times people don't know what they don't know. So it's having that guiding hand that we're all trying to help people with in our platforms that we've got.
Excellent. And it's not even just getting a better deal. Look at the things, all the subscriptions that you've got. Do you actually need them? Yeah. Do you need Netflix and Stan and Amazon Prime? You probably don't. You probably want to watch one of them. Yeah, you do, yeah. So, there's lots of things that you don't need. And because it only costs $15 a month, you might think, it's only $15 a month. But excellent. Okay, now the frightening part of your research, Paul, is that 9% of respondents have a comprehensive financial plan. 56% have a rough plan. I don't know what rough means, probably back of an envelope, we earn this much, I spend this much on groceries, and the rest no plan at all. So if this isn't the time to actually have a plan, I don't know when's a good time to have a plan. Any comments on that? And I totally appreciate what you said, Tarek. You got to start small.
The interesting thing as well in the research is also we correlated the level of financial stress that people reported. And when you go from a full plan to no plan, the level of financial stress triples. And it makes sense, because if you're in a situation where you don't know what to do next, and someone just shines the light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe there's 100 steps, maybe there's 10. But if you know what each step is after that, your stress levels decrease. The cortisone goes down. Even if it's a long journey, if you know what that journey is now, you're less stressed. And that's what, for me, the power of having a plan, a lot of financial literacy stuff that we read about and that a lot of clients and corporations do is great, but it misses the one key ingredient of personal context. It's got to be relevant to your situation, so it answers the question of what you do next. And so when you have a plan, you then actually know what to do, your stress levels go down, and then when you go along and you shop through Super Rewards and you increase your superannuation that way, and you know you don't have to go to the old payday lenders to get you a bit of extra money that month that you need, your plan keeps on going. You don't fall down a hole. You know what I mean? And I think that's what we're trying to do here. All of this is just improve people's financial well-being just by empowering them. And allowing them to be in control themselves.
Absolutely.
And if I can add in there, Paul, one of life's maxims that I learnt at a reasonably young age was, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. And that is so true in every aspect of life, whether it's your finances or your career or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I also want I also want to add to that as well, that a lot of people may actually be scared inherently to create a plan because they know that, like, they may be in the trenches or something, right? Like, a lot of people literally don't even look at their bank accounts sometimes just because they know they overspent over the weekend, for example. So I think that this is the time where you can't be scared. You have to take control of your own situation, and there are tools out there, exactly like Paul's met my plan. Reward Super that helps out. We could help out as well if you're in need, and it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be like a scary situation. Like, all you got to know is, like, it may be scary for like the first 5 minutes where reality will hit you. But then after that, like an hour later, after you've like resolved a little bit of it, trust me, you'd feel much better. It's kind of like what Paul was saying. It's just like a stage by stage process. So you got to take control and have initiative, and just don't be scared of your own demons, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've talked about a lot of gloom and doom about the pandemic, but for some of us, well, I don't know about me, but a lot of people have actually done quite well financially. So if you have a job and you're living at home, for example, and you're not going out, you're not catching public transport, you're not parking anywhere, you're actually saving a lot of money. And a lot of millennials have started to invest their money as well. And a report also came out last week, and according to Griffith University researchers, Australians are set to inherit $3.5 trillion in the next 20 years. That's like a huge amount of intergenerational wealth that's going to be passed on to a lot of millennials. And that, if you think of the super system, Pascal, which is sitting at 2.9 trillion, 3.5 is a lot of money. It's bigger than our super system. So there is a bit of a silver lining out there, and people are going to inherit a lot of money. But we want them, particularly millennials, to actually have the skills to manage that money. So when they do inherit it, they're not actually burning it. What are the tools that you've seen, not that we're talking about today, that millennials are using that most people know about and others who don't know should be using right now? Tarek, I'll pick on you because you're the millennial on the panel.
No worries. Thanks. I think today I look younger than usual. I was going to say that I think that one thing I'm really happy about, by the way, is the democratization, shall I say, of like investment products. So, for example, like one of the new products that's out there, Superhero, which I love, no fees or minimal fees on like on investment and stuff. And you could actually see that more and more retail investors, including millennials are very, very switched on, and they really, really buy into products. So, for example, whoever's using Afterpay right now may actually also be an investor in Afterpay as a millennial, because they actually understand like the business and they love it to bits, right? So it's important to note that millennials are definitely far more switched on and financially savvy, just because they're also tech savvy. So they really understand these tools and they love using them. I guess our point my point of view is, you got to do it in a better way, right? Like you got to do, when you do invest, you got to make sure that you understand what you're investing in and you're doing it responsibly. So you've got $1,000. You don't just put the $1,000 into like Afterpay, for example. I mean, I love that company, but you don't put all your eggs in one basket. You have to understand how to actually invest. So just read a few books. Ask a few questions from like some advisors. Maybe read Paul's blog, to be fair, because it'll probably have a whole bunch of information about how you actually could make the right choices and decisions in your investment when it comes to investment. But when it comes to building wealth by millennials, I do believe that they are much savvier people than the previous generation.
Yeah.
I
agree with that.
I think, go on, Pascal, go for it.
I was just going to say, and yes, other than Superhero, I would also suggest people take a look at Raise. who was the it's the father of superhero, so to speak, as in it was on the scene first. And their UX and usability is great. They've made it very simple, streamlined to do some investing. So that would be certainly another investment style platform that you could consider. But also there are some great super funds out there as well who have really specific focuses. So, for example, like if you only believe in Australian property, there is a super fund that only invests in Aussie property called Super Estate, for example. If you're passionate about ethical investing, then there are super funds, like Australian Ethical or others. So you can actually, I think a lot of people forget that their super is actually theirs. So it's your asset. And so if you believe in property, or if you believe in, the environment, then you can actually put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah. I think I'm jealous of millennials because they've got one thing that the rest of us don't have, and that's time. It's the biggest asset you've got to build wealth in your super fund or outside of super. Use the tools that we've got, but start now. Even if it's $10 a month, it doesn't matter. You just start the habit and you get going. It's one thing I wish I'd have done was start earlier. And I'm teaching my nieces and nephews to get going now in their early 20s and late teens. But that's probably, for me, the millennials, just start and just make it a habit so you don't miss the money later on. And you'll be amazed. You'll get out your mates, you'll go have fun and piss up against the wall, so to speak. But when you're 20 years later, you'll have this big bucket that you haven't even noticed you missed, and your mates are going to go, where'd that come from?
Yep.
So start early is my biggest piece of advice for people that age.
And Paul, this is not a particular question for millennials, but as millennials grow older, and just say you've got a 30-year-old now who might inherit a lot of money. According to this research, the average is $320,000 20 years later. Along their journey, what's a good mix of having, technology as a tool to help them manage their finances versus a human who can give them more comprehensive advice? Yeah. What's a good mix?
So I suppose we are the technology version of a human giving advice, I suppose. At the moment, traditional advice, it's delivered in a static piece of time. So as soon as you get that piece of advice 2 weeks later, your situation may have changed and it's out of date. Advice should be a living document, and that's what we provide. So if you link your bank accounts to Map My Plan, you come back a week later, a month later, or a year later, it reflects your current situation. So the advice reflects what you should do next based on where you are now. Yeah, and so that's where. And you said before as well, Tate, that it's a confronting thing to go and see an advisor. I've been an advisor for mums and dads through to people on the rich list, and the first meeting is always the same. It's someone walks in, and pardon my credulity, but they walk in, it's like staying there naked. It's like, here's my financial life, judge me. It's an confronting thing to do. But to have an online platform where you can go as shallow or as deep, and you can go in and out of it as much as you want, you get the advice when you want it, and it still gives you that guidance. I think it helps a great deal. And the research you mentioned earlier with Griffith University, they all mentioned that about 2/3 of the people who inherit wealth are not going to use the same advisor their parents did. Because they want the technology, they want it to be delivered when they want. So for me, the biggest challenge we've got is that advice for us, it should be a subscription service that is there as a guardian angel that you can call on whenever you want, and it will be up to date and tell you answer that one question I said before. What do I do next to improve my situation, given that something's changed? So I think it's both. I mean, if you're seeing an advisor, use the technology as a sounding board and challenge your advisor. Educate yourself a bit more. If you start with the technology, you've gone through the process, seeing that advisor the first time is no longer confronting because you know what you need to do, but you want someone to help you to do it.
Absolutely. And do you think millennials, coming back to the younger generation, if you give them a questionnaire where they have to input, say, 100 values, for example, they're not going to do it, right?
No.
So,
no chance.
No way.
But
No way.
but if they do do it, they probably want something back in return that will carry them through their life. They want the variables to change.
Yeah. So if you go and see a normal financial planner now, they'll give you a questionnaire that's got between 100 and 200 data points. They expect you to fill it out before you come back to them. So Map My Plan, we ask you at most at any one stage, it's only the very beginning, we ask 12 questions. After that, we ask 4 questions at any one time before you get feedback on what the advice is that you should do next. But you could stop at debt and not worry about anything else. You just start at super or whatever it may be, it's relevant to you. But when you link your accounts, as Terry said before, when you've got that budget, people link their accounts and their budget's automatically populated. And the stuff just updates continually. So it's a want it now sort of model, but it's also the subscription service that we charge. It's not a cost. It's about 2% of what an advisor costs to get a plan.